Hello, and you're all very welcome along to another episode of the Gaelic Statsman podcast. And yes, the intercounty season is over, the reviews are over, and everything like that. And in the podcast now, we'll start the interview series. I'm delighted to be joined by the first episode of the interview series since about early 2022 by Daniel Reid of Equator Gaels GAA in Uganda. We're going to talk about GAA abroad, the club itself in Equator Gaels as well, and how it can be developed and things like that as well later on in the chat. And just before we get into the chat, shout out for our sponsors at Capture Athletics. If you want the best gear around, check them out if you haven't already. So yes, Daniel, you said off air there you're in Ireland for a few weeks now, back from Uganda. So how's it been back home in Ireland in the last few weeks?
Well, to be honest, in Ireland you can't really plan anything. So you could wake up in the morning, the sky could be blue, and oh, we'll go to the butcher's, we'll get a bit of meat and we'll throw on a barbecue, and an hour later, all of a sudden, then your umbrellas are out, and it's nice being home. Don't get me wrong. I was in Uganda up until kind of mid-July, home for a few weeks. I've been living in the Middle East for 13 years. So I finished my work up there in the end of June, and then went to Uganda, back in Ireland now, back to the Middle East next week, and then back to Uganda in mid-September.
Some schedule ahead of you.
Oh, it's mad. And then I'm traveling to a club just outside Boston in October, Worcester Fenians, and we're doing some collaborative stuff with them with relation to Equator Gaels. We've already had a collaboration with Clon Oman in Oman and with Portland GAA in the US as well. So it's really great that people are getting on board, supporting us. We're doing collaborative stuff. So, more and more jerseys are being created with Equator Gaels in mind, a little African flair. So it's really, really great that, people are embracing what we're trying to do in Uganda, and really, really getting trying to get that support there so that we can continue to do what we've been doing for the past 18 months.
Just to get into it, Daniel, where did Equator Gaels all begin as a matter of interest? How did it all start? How did the idea begin to flourish?
Well, it happened in the office of the manager at the Boma Hotel in Entebbe, March last year, on the same day that Irish Dancing Uganda was created. So we were just sitting down and we were just chatting about, what we did when we were growing up and things that we were interested in. And John Walsh, who runs Irish Dancing Uganda, and myself, we were just chatting, and we were like, wouldn't it be great if in Entebbe we had, Irish dancing, we had Gaelic Games, we had Irish music, and, we started looking at how we could build Irish culture and how Irish culture can be used as basically a tool to create community. And that's why if you look at our social media, our kind of tag is from the village to the Pearl of Africa. So it's kind of that, local mindset where if people are involved and people are included, everybody benefits and everybody grows. Whereas if you try and seclude or, separate from people, it doesn't really happen. So that happened. And then we started, social media, and we started reaching out to, organizations and companies and different things. And Outfield Clothing in Derry got in contact with us, along with Gaelic Mystery Kits and the Loaf of Pod podcast. And they were like, okay, how can we help? So obviously Outfield had been a clothing manufacturer. They were like, okay, we'll look after the making of the jerseys. And then we started designing them. And not sure if your listeners have seen them, but they're pretty cool. And then Gaelic Mystery Kits came on as our sponsor, and Loaf of Bread came on as a huge supporter of what we're doing in Uganda.
See the jerseys, all right, like they're really, really cool stuff anyway, and definitely I'd recommend any of the listeners or the viewers on this podcast to buy them anyway. Look at the Equator Gaels Instagram pages and all that on Instagram. It's incredible, the kits are really, and sure, it just probably rises up the hype for this project with these type of jerseys? And roughly, like, has there been many sales of the jerseys so far?
I'll tell you, I was down in my local club last week, and not many people know that it's me that run up until I put up a couple of videos of myself talking about it. But the idea behind establishing Equator Gaels and the way it was done at the start was not to have myself as, the person in front of everything that's going on, because I'm merely there to try and keep everything going. The coaches on the ground are Ugandan, and they're now getting a little bit of coaching and a little bit more investment being put in place for their coaching. And I just tried to avoid me being there, because a lot of people will look at it as me trying to force Irish culture on people abroad. And it established, and people started to look at it and see what was going on and were impressed by it. And then in April this year, I kind of thought to myself, well, people have embraced it without seeing me and seeing who's involved. And then I just thought, okay, maybe I'll start talking about it a bit more, because it's something, because I've been in Uganda since 2008. I was a university student in Limerick at UL, and as part of the UL um, academic pathway, there is the co-op program. So I did my co-op in Uganda for 9 months in 2008, up to January 2009. So I've been in Uganda an awful long time, and it was something that I was thinking about back then and over the years, because I think I've had like 29 trips now to Uganda. So it was something that I was thinking about, but it was only when sitting down with somebody else and bouncing the idea off them that it came to, I came to the realization that it wasn't a bad idea, that there would be support there, and the people of Ireland and people around the world have really shown that there is huge support for people who are trying to make a difference, and using Gaelic Games as that medium has been, quite successful.
I suppose the reach on social media that you're getting at the moment. I heard Michael Deedy in a recent interview with you that one of your videos reached just over 500,000 views, or in and around that number. So has social media really helped in spreading the news around Equator Gaels in Uganda?
Oh, absolutely. Like, even if you look at, we'll say, how I got in contact with you, I wouldn't have known who you were or what you were doing unless social media was present. I wouldn't have had the connections with people in the United States, and I wouldn't be going to Massachusetts to an Irish festival, or I wouldn't have a collaborative jersey with the guys at Portland GAA. So, social media is one of those things that people sometimes misuse it, and sometimes it's underused. But I think it's a great platform for myself, Equator Gaels, yourself. That social media allows us. There's no boundaries. There's no borders. Content, if it's good, will be embraced. And if people see that you're actually genuinely doing something positive, they're usually more than willing and to get involved and to be part of what you're doing. Because at the end of the day, I won't say it's going to be a legacy thing, but it is definitely something that will leave a mark, especially when it comes to Gaelic Games, Irish dancing, Irish music. Just like I will say with the Irish music, we now have Bowrons being made in Uganda by Ugandan drum makers. There's hurling helmets in the pipeline, where recycled plastic will be turned into hurling helmets, recycled metal being turned into face guards. And all of this creates jobs, it creates opportunities, and this is all within the realms of, Irish culture and heritage.
You mentioned there about Irish dancing and Bowrons being brought into Uganda as well. Facets of Irish culture, obviously Gaelic Games as well, obviously with the club you're with, in Equator Gaels. How important is it to spread Irish culture worldwide? We've seen it in many countries, in Australia, in America, in European countries such as Italy, Germany, Great Britain. So how important is it to spread Irish culture into a country like Uganda?
See, the thing is, if you look at what Irish culture and what Irish, what it is to be Irish, it hasn't always been straightforward. It hasn't always been easy. And this is very much like the lives of people in Uganda. You say Ireland would have been founded, on hardship. Religion would have been a huge part of it. And that's pretty much the same as Uganda is now. Like Uganda, obviously they have the technology, available within the country of the modern day, but society in itself is still very, very underdeveloped. And that's why I think, Gaelic Games and giving children in primary and secondary schools, giving them an extracurricular activity like hurling, football, camogie, Irish dancing, Irish music, giving them those facets of what we grew up with is something that, can't be undervalued and it can't be ignored because it's really bringing them along. Yes, there's other sports and they play those other sports, you know, soccer, netball, basketball. But for us, it's kind of like instead of just being, developmental, why not, put in place a development mindset whereby you don't have to just do the things that you've always done. There's always value in something that's new. And whether it be, our sports, our culture, our heritage, our literature, our, songs, it's not like we're forcing it upon them. It's not something that they have to do, but it's something that they're really embracing because they've seen hurling on the laptop or on my phone or on a TV if we can get a connection to it. They've had Irish dancers who danced with Riverdance and Lord of the Dance over coaching them. This year's Rose from Donegal was in Uganda last year, and she was working with Irish dancers. So there is a huge scope. It's just for me, it's trying to get people to see what we're doing, and that's the most important thing. As I said to you before, a lot of people think that development happens through fundraising and donations, but development itself is often a mindset. Whereas if the child believes that they can do something and they see that there's people there to support them, why can't they do it? Why can't we have a Ugandan team at the GAA World Games? Why can't we have an Ugandan Irish dancer in river dance or Lord of the Dance? There is no limitations. The only limitations we have as Equator Gaels is exposure, and as people is not having the support that we need.
Interesting, actually, about the World Games last year that was held in Derry, 2023. I interviewed somebody for the Southern Star when I was doing work there from Australasia GA, and he was mentioning about the importance of GA being spread across the globe, whether it's Australasia, which is Australia, New Zealand direction. You have Germany there, you have Italy, you have America, you have a lot in Canada as well. You have others in Great Britain as well, and of course you have London, who compete in the Connacht Senior Football Championship, and New York as well in the Connacht Senior Football Championship. So like the game is spreading, and it's great to see, obviously, with Uganda and Argentina. I've seen in recent weeks as well. Paris Gaels, I've seen them off the ball, and they did a few interviews there as well. So it's great that is just being spread all across the world, and great to see, Daniel, that Equator Gaels are contributing to it, and hopefully they'll be at the GAA World Games in future years.
Oh, absolutely. And like even if we look at how Gaelic Games is used developmentally, if we look at Warriors for Humanity, which is set up by Alan Kearns, where 50 to 60 past present football, hurling, camogie stars traveled to Kenya over the last few years, and the impact that they're having with self-help Africa, and how GAA stars are taking their time out to go and do something that's very, very advantageous at that present time, but also for the future, especially when it comes to planting trees. It can create a livelihood, it can create a source of revenue, a source of income. And next year, the Warriors for Humanity are going to be in Uganda, working with Equator Gaels on developing the GAA and Gaelic Games itself in Uganda. So that's something that's really, really exciting. And this, as you said earlier, comes from the importance of social media. And it's something that we've tried to do, and it's something that we're doing. And I'm hoping that moving forward, more and more people will embrace with us and get involved. And it doesn't take, for a lot of people, they might not be able to travel to Uganda, but a lot of people have social media. So even sharing, liking, reposting, those are things that increase the viewership. And there might be people who are interested and who might want to get out to Uganda to help out in any way they can, but they don't know how to. And often I feel that people, when they say that wouldn't it be great to go out and do something? Well, if you can't come out and do something, you can definitely still be involved by reaching out and just increasing our exposure. And that's the biggest thing. It's not about donations. It's not about money. It's about the exposure and the near 400 children who are playing Gaelic games in Uganda, them being seen. It's like, as I was saying off the air, Nilo Cusack's, which has now been set up in Jinja. They're working with a school that is primarily deaf children or children who are hard of hearing. So it's great to see that that Gaelic games can be, rolled out to children who might not be able to play other sports or might not be able to do what they want to do in their day-to-day lives. But Gaelic Games is giving them that opportunity to play with their friends, to interact with other people, to be part of competition, to grow, to focus on their wellness. I'm sure that when it comes to the impact that Gaelic Games is having, what impact is it having on emotional intelligence, on wellness? So it's all of these different things, and emotional intelligence has become very, very a big part of what we do. We'll say in the last year, we've started collaborating with a edutainment company in Dubai called the Wadi Tribe. They've released uh, two primarily GA orientated books, which was TAC Plays in Croke Park and TAC Goes to Africa. And TAC Goes to Africa was a collaboration between them and us. And the idea was to basically show how hurling can be embraced, even if it is fictionally, by turtles and giraffes and hippos, and how it can bring huge excitement and a huge amount of enjoyment to children.
Definitely can, all right. And I suppose just as a matter of interest, do you have a home pitch where you train, or do you have anywhere that you train amongst Equator Gaels?
Locally, it's called the Cabbage Patch. Um, it's a small field out the back of one of the schools, um, and it's surrounded by cabbages, potatoes. It's basically in the middle of a functioning garden, but they make it work. And that's the thing. You don't have to have a full size hurling field or football field to be able to play hurling or football. Like how many Irish people in Ireland and Irish people around the world, their introduction to hurling and football and camogie was in the backyard, 20 yards apart, striking the ball to each other, or kicking the ball to each other, or playing handball off the gable end of a house. In Gaelic Games, there's no restrictions. The only restriction is in thinking that you have to have everything to start. All you need to have is the will to want to. I've heard of stories, lads playing hurling with the handles of a hatchet. You know, it really doesn't matter. There's no limitation to Gaelic Games and what Gaelic Games can offer people.
And you talked about what Gaelic Games offer people there in the last point, but how difficult in a way was it to introduce the kids in Uganda to a game of hurling and Gaelic football? Because I see obviously the interview that you did with Sean and Michael as well, that football was very easy for the kids to incorporate because it was kind of a mix between basketball and soccer in a way, maybe rugby in some ways as well. But hurling is such a difficult skill to execute in many ways. So how difficult was it to train the kids in how to play hurling?
Well, the first challenge was to try not to have too many children beating each other with the hurleys. But to be honest, look, the thing is, children are inquisitive and they can be interested. And basically showing them what the game looked like first and how fluid it was and how, these Irish men and women invest their lives in an amateur sport when they have to be up in the morning for work and they can still get to this skill level. and then being able to see, these individuals, these athletes, playing with such grace. And then they were like, okay, let's see if we can do it. And hurling is a kind of a passion project. Me being from Kilkenny, um, that was kind of the thing. If we were to travel to the World Games, it would definitely be Gaelic football. But I do like the idea of the coordination and all of the attributes that playing hurling can give you, which is very, very different than Gaelic football. It's a skill in itself. It's very, very difficult to learn unless you grew up with it. But there are some of the children that are getting quite good at it because, they ask, can they have a hurley? And they go and they hit the ball against the wall and they rise the ball and all of the basic skills. But for it to become as fluid as the Gaelic football has become, it won't be today or tomorrow, but it is something that I'm, highly invested in and trying to get the very best out of them. And I can see the impact that it's having on the children as a whole.
As the training sessions have gone on and as the kids have learned more about the game of hurling and, of course, the game of Gaelic football as well, which do you think they prefer, hurling or Gaelic football as a matter of interest?
I think that they enjoy hurling more because, they get their helmets on, everybody gets a hurley, and, it's something completely different. But they're definitely way better at Gaelic football. Like, even if you look at some of the videos, the Gaelic football, they've started to learn how to run off the shoulder and, where they should kick the ball into space in front of the forward, you know, hand passing and going. Whereas the hurling, you can see it's very, very primitive in its current state, but they really do like, they love the sound of the, as we'll say, the clash of the ash or the clash of the bamboo. If we're talking about modern day developments in Gaelic Games technology, but it's just one of those things. They really love hurling. It's just they're not very good at it, and they love Gaelic football, and they're getting quite good at it. So that's that's the reason why I haven't decided. Okay, we'll just focus on one, because it's nice for them to be able to embrace both codes. Both boys and girls playing, hurling, camogie, and football. So it's really great, to be honest, to be able to see them, enjoying themselves so much when they're playing, and when they come together. Like we had a blitz, um, in May this year, and it was great. We had two teams that came from Kagadi, which is in the west, which is about a 6-hour drive from the capital city. So they came in and they played. We had children from Kampala, from Entebbe, and they all got together, and there was face painting and bouncing castles, and the Irish ambassador decided, okay, how about have a puck We had a puck and the Irish ambassador got involved. So it's one of those wonderful things that can happen anywhere in the world, like it does happen every single weekend and every evening in Ireland. You have people who are getting themselves down to the local GAA pitch, whether it be players, whether it be mammies and daddies dropping their kids off to training, the coaches, the managers, the water boy, the linesman. Everybody has a place in Gaelic games. And that's the reason why I feel that Gaelic games around the world is really, really important. And it shouldn't be something that's limited to the island of Ireland. And it doesn't have to be the diaspora abroad who are playing Gaelic games. Gaelic games is for everyone.
Yeah, as the slogan goes, it's for all, basically. And I suppose you mentioned the Irish ambassador of Uganda coming over and doing a pub fada there, the kids enjoying the game of hurling, the game of Gaelic football as well. I suppose, doesn't that just encapsulate the enjoyment of the game in its own right? Because we see at inter-county level, it's all about tactics and stopping the opposition and things like that, a bit of negativity. But when you see moments like this, kids genuinely enjoying the game, it just brings out the enjoyment of GAA in itself, and it's just great to see. Oh,
absolutely. Like, in inter-county hurling and football now. It's so detailed. It's so professional at an amateur level. But where you have, 25, 30 kids out on a pitch, there's no full back, there's no full forward, there's no blanket defense. It's just the ball goes in and you're hoping that they might stay to their side of the pitch or their end of the pitch. But does it really matter? Not to me. Like we're not doing it to try and, you know, rise up from, junior to intermediate to senior. You know, when the skills get better, it's basically like we have, you know, 8 to 16-year-olds embracing the game. And first, it's about, one, the fact that they love doing it. Two, there's a whole host of different attributes that come from Gaelic games, not only within the game, but teamwork, your mindset. But it's supposed to be enjoyed. It can be played at the most elite levels. That's great. But it's just like any sport. Like you can be on holidays, in the south of France and go and get into a swimming pool. Doesn't mean you have to do, 20 lengths of the pool. You don't have to go and swim 1,000 meters. It doesn't have to be. It can be informal, and there's huge beauty in the fact that it's just for fun. You know, as they get better, we can then focus on positioning and, okay, this is how you do this and this is how you do that. But it's not important. It's only as important as you want to make it, and that's the beauty of anything that we do. We don't have to make everything serious. Everything, has to be this way or it has to be that way. It's okay in dance. There's multiple different dances. Irish dancing is very structured. It's very, your body has to be still, but that's the form of it. But then if you look at, Irish dancing versus Shan Nos, there's very little restriction in that. Still Irish dancing. You know, how people dance on a Saturday night in a nightclub in Limerick. That's still dancing. So it's just one of those things. You can have your formalities, you can have your structure, but at the end of the day, why put structure in place that's going to restrict the fun and the enjoyment of playing a sport?
Yeah, definitely. So well said. Definitely about the game of Gaelic Games. And something in the interview actually caught my attention as well, that you did your co-op abroad. And many people actually do their co-op I studied in UL as well. Well, I'm graduating very soon now. But um, I see a lot of people, including myself, do their co-op on the island of Ireland, whether it's County Cork, County Kerry, County Clare, Dublin, whatever it is. But I see a few and far between doing abroad. Would you recommend doing for UL students in the future doing your co-op abroad rather than the island of Ireland?
Absolutely. It's the one thing that has changed the way I think, the way I act, the way I am. Like, I think there's a couple of reasons why people do it in Ireland. And one is it's an opportunity to make money. Two, it might be an opportunity for getting in with a potential employer when you graduate after fourth year. It's a good experience to be able to put on your application if you want to do your master's degree. But all of that can be all of the only thing that study or going abroad doesn't give you is the money. It gives you everything else. It gives you life experience. It gives you exposure. When I was in Uganda the first time, we were working in a local secondary school. I was teaching economics, commerce, and geography. A friend of mine was teaching English and biology. We traveled out together. And the thing is, there's so much to be said about getting out into the world and often having comfort in the discomfort of it all. Obviously, going to, sub-Saharan Africa, was daunting enough. But the people there in Uganda are most accommodating. interested. They want to know about you. They want to learn from you. They want to know how things are done in other parts of the world. So really, you know, speaking, directly to students who would have this opportunity, why not? You're 20, 20, 21 years old. What's there to lose? There's loads of time for, corporate interaction. There's loads of time for, working in the county council. There's loads of time for working in local newspapers. You can do that over there. Write articles for the local newspaper. You know, get yourself on a local radio show and talk about Irish culture, language around the world, like I'm doing right now. Like there's only limitation in what I would what I think sometimes is that we put too much pressure on what's next in Ireland rather than what is and what could be. And that's what I would say to UL students and students around Ireland. If an opportunity presents itself, grab it with both hands. Don't look back, just look forward.
Again, very well said. Definitely about that topic, and I'm sure UL students would definitely take advice from the quotes that you just said, Daniel, as well. With the Uganda players that are in the club, obviously in Equator Gaels, do they watch much GAA from this island? And if so, do they have any icons? Do they have any players that they look up to in hurling or Gaelic football?
I wouldn't say that they have icons. One player who a lot of the children would have embraced with is Taggy Fogarty from Kilkenny. He was out in Uganda along with two Irish dancers. So that he would be their reference. Obviously, he's retired from intercounty, but I don't think that they have a shining light in their lives. Like we would talk about different players and their successes, and and the thing is, now with Warriors for Humanity coming to Uganda, it is going to give the children an opportunity to meet some of the best who play the game that they love so much. And that's something that's really, really, really exciting.
Definitely is. Like 8 and 40, that's some player to get in your ranks. And obviously he was on Dance with Stars as well. He's a multiple time All Ireland champion as well. So to get a guy involved like that's some going.
Yeah, the thing is, they came out in association with the Irish Embassy, and it was great to see how they interacted with the children and how much of a like when he was speaking, you could see how the children were looking at him and taking it in almost in awe. But this is the thing: like, there's no reason why more people can't get themselves out to Uganda. Obviously, it's expensive, but if people did want to get involved and did want to come out, it would be something that I would accommodate. Whether it be, booking their flights, their hotels, the logistics around, finding, an itinerary for them if they wanted to not only get involved with Gaelic Games or Irish dancing, but also, wanted to do a safari or wanted to do some of the, adventure based activities that Uganda is well known for.
And you mentioned the health and outfield clothing, and of course, Gaelic Mystery Kits gave in designed the jerseys and things like that as well. So, how big of a help have they been? And Gaelic Mystery Kits, obviously, a brilliant Instagram page as well, over 10,000 followers there as well. That spreads the game of Equator Gaels GAA even more in across the globe.
Absolutely, and we'll say since doing the jersey with Outfield and collaborating with Gaelic Mystery Kits, I'm now the Outfield global ambassador for the company. So that's all obviously helped as well, because the owner, Daniel McKinless, he kind of has dedicated a percentage of the sales of the jerseys to go back into kit and the support of children in Uganda. The same with the collaborative jersey we did with Clonagh Oman. and with Portland GAA. And he's been very, very good, and Stephen and Jason at Loaf of Bread. They've all been great, We were at the finals of the LGFA this year, and the response was great. As I was saying earlier, when I was down at the local football field or local hurling field, there was 4 or 5 guys running around the training session wearing, Equator Gaels jerseys that they bought online. They didn't get them from me. They just saw them on social media, as we were talking about earlier, and the impact social media can have. And there was just in a random hurling field in South Kilkenny, 4 or 5 guys running around in a hurling jersey from Uganda. So, if that's not something that inspires me to, continue to push and try to grow it more and more, I can't really see what else could happen. It's just one of those amazing things. Same as the Irish dancers being on the Late Late Show for St. Patrick's Day. Like it's Irish culture engaging the Irish community from abroad. And there should never be any boundary or border or blockage or anything put in place to prevent that from happening, because Irish culture shouldn't be just for Irish people, but is something that should be respected as well.
You mentioned obviously being part of the GAA World Games as being a main aim, obviously to spread Irish culture. You mentioned it being a main aim as well. Is there any other main aims from Equator Gaels GAA, or is that kind of the main two to look at?
The main idea is just to keep it fun, get more children involved. We're in a fortunate position as well, where we have 4 or 5 children who we also have in schools, that were struggling and weren't able to, pay their way through school. So it's great that we can also get children into school, and not only having them playing Gaelic Games as an extracurricular activity, but also making sure that they're on the right path to being able to get themselves out of poverty, and education and sport being 2 of the main avenues that I feel that are present and available. It's great. It's great that, with the support that we have, that we can get children into schools. Like we can't support every child that needs to be in school, but at least if we can get, 3 or 4 every single year into school, at least then it's not only the sporting side, but we're also impacting their day-to-day lives as well.
And just before we end the chat as well, where could we find Equator Gaels? I know there's an Instagram page. I might link that in the description of this video as well. But is there any other places that you can find Equator Gaels, or is Instagram the main page to go to?
Well, we're on Instagram. We're on X, formerly TikTok, or formerly TikTok, formerly Twitter. We're on Twitter as well. If you just type in Equator Gaels into any social media, you'll find us, and there's links there as well if people want to check out our jerseys. If you type in Daniel Reid, you'll find me. If you just want to message me and want to know more about what we're doing, I'm available. Just reach out, and we can try and see how you can be involved, and how people that listen to your podcast or watch your podcast, how they can get involved as well. And if, for example, any UL students are interested in what co-op opportunities might be available in Uganda, they can let me know as well.
Absolutely, and definitely there'll be a lot of people getting on to you after this podcast, I'm sure, Daniel. And thanks again for coming on to the podcast today. Thanks to Capture Athletics for sponsoring today's show as well. And until the next episode next week, we'll see you all then. Take care. And thanks to Daniel again for coming on from Equator Gaels GAA. Make sure to give them a follow on Instagram. Until the next episode next week, we'll see you all then, and take care.
Cheers. Thank you.